Hello there, welcome to Speaking of Business. I'm your host, Nancy Boyle. Today we're going to be talking about a hot topic, small business loans. I know everybody's interested in that. Joining me are Janice Bounds with Atlantic Coast Bank, Janine Belanke with Essential Capital, and David Marovich with One-to-One Financial Credit Union. So welcome everybody.
Thank you.
David, we'll start with the gents first. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do?
I am the small business banker for One-to-One Financial Credit Union, which is local credit union, formerly Florida Telco, and we do business loans anywhere from $10,000 up to $4 million.
Wow. Now, is it just for your members, or?
No, you don't have to be a member. We are a community credit union, so anywhere in Northeast Florida, Duval, Clay, Nassau, St. John's is our main market.
Okay. And Janine, you do something a little bit different, so why don't you talk a little bit about what it is that you do?
Okay, I'm a business development officer for Essential Capital Finance, locally here in Jacksonville. I cover statewide for the, Florida, and what we do is the SBA 504 product, which is the 20-year fixed asset loan with SBA financing, and we partner with credit unions and financial institutions to make those loans.
Okay, we're going to talk more about that in a little bit. Janice, how about what do you do at Atlantic Coast Bank?
I work as a business development officer for Atlantic Coast Bank, a small community bank here in Jacksonville. We have 7 locations, and we have some locations in South Georgia. I do SBA primarily lending as well as conventional lending on loans up to $5 million.
Okay, so let's sort of educate our audience a little bit, because I think people are kind of confused about the various kinds of loans that they can get. So Janice, let's start with you as the conventional banker, and why don't you talk a little bit about the various loans that you do, and we'll work our way back and forth.
Well, I do conventional lending as well as SBA lending. On the conventional side, it could be real estate, secured or unsecured, depending on the loan purpose and type. And I also do small business administration lending, SBA lending as they call it, 7A and 504 lending.
Okay, why don't you tell us a little bit about the difference between a 7A loan and a conventional loan, and then Janine, maybe you can kind of chime in on the difference between the 504 and the other two.
Well, the difference between a conventional loan versus a SBA loan, whether it's 7A or 504, is basically the amount the person's going to put down as for their down payment, the loan term, and could be the interest rate as well.
Okay, and then the 7A has to go through different procedures or different requirements?
The 7A has to be approved. We are not a preferred lender, so we get sent to the SBA for underwriting. We underwrite it and approve it at the bank. Then we send it to SBA for them to underwrite and approve it.
Okay, and so Janine, if we're looking, if I'm a business owner,
right,
and I don't know, I have it in my head, I want an SBA loan, and I come to Janice and decide on the 504, what's different? Because that's where you get involved.
Correct. What we would do is we would partner with, for instance, Atlantic Coast Bank, and with the SBA 504 product, that would be for a person that either wants to buy an existing building or buy some land and build a building. Or they could even buy a building and renovate it for their business and buy furniture, fixtures, equipment, and their full project cost to move their business into that location. And what we would do is, in a companion way, we would split that loan. The bank would take the first 50% of the loan, and I would take the remainder up to 40% of the loan, and we would give the borrower 20% fixed, 20-year fixed rate financing on that up to that 90% mark. It's really a great topic of lending right now because the market has been a bit restricted. So now we're coming into more eligibility for people to be able to move forward and get the SBA products and companion with the banks and lending institutions, credit unions, et cetera. And it works out really well because they can keep their working capital in the business.
Okay, and so David, from the credit union perspective, are you guys doing SBA lending as well? Or?
We are, and we can do 7A, SBA Express, as well as the 504 program that Janine was talking about, and we partnered before with Janine on the 504, as well as regular conventional financing.
Okay, so let's say an established business comes to you, and maybe there's some real estate involved. I mean, how do you determine what's going to be the best program for that person, or how's that typically work?
Usually you're going to look at for that person,
Okay.
you know, and I think they alluded to a little bit ago about down payment. The great thing with the 504 program is that the borrower doesn't have to put as much down. So
Okay.
they might only have to put 10 or 15% versus 20%.
Okay.
So, you know, for them, it's all about what's going to make the best sense for the borrower.
Okay, so for a conventional loan, then you're looking at a higher down payment.
Correct. You're looking
Okay.
at least 20% down.
Okay, so depending on what the borrower's situation is, you might factor it in to
Factor it in and
whatever the type of loan
Exactly.
program. Okay, so Janice, I'm going to come back to you. What are some of the things that you're looking for when an established business comes to you and says, I need to borrow X number of dollars? You know, are you looking for a new business plan? Maybe they've been in business for 5 years, so they have somewhat of a track record. So what are the kinds of things that you're looking for from that potential borrower in order to evaluate whether or not you're able to lend this person money?
For an existing client, it would depend on the purpose. What is it that they want the money for, the loan for?
Okay.
If it's for expansion purposes, they want to expand their business. A business plan may not be necessary because they've been in business. If they've been in business longer than 2 years, all I would need is 1 year projections on their expansion plans and how it will help generate more revenue for them. It's all going to be purpose driven as to
Okay.
which direction I go with on the lending side.
Okay, and Janine, the SBA has some sort of a debt refinancing thing, right?
Yes,
Isn't
we
that going
do.
on?
Mhm.
So let's say I'm this same 5-year-old business, but I want to kind of, I don't know, get my cash flowing better, or, you know, I want to consolidate some things, which may or may not lead to an expansion, but I'm in that situation where I want to kind of consolidate some things. So how does that kind of situation work?
On the Temporary Jobs Act, if someone owns an existing building and say they have a balloon note or a rate that's higher than market rate and they want to
Okay.
reconsider restructuring that cash flow and that debt structure within their organization, they could look at utilizing that fixed asset and the companion products with the banks and lending institutions to do a SBA refinance up to 90%. And that works out well. We've been able to help many borrowers, you know, improve their cash flows or take money out of the equity for the refinance to put it back into the business for other purposes that were eligible to pay other salaries, to hire more staff, and to do other things that they needed to do.
Okay, so what if it's a startup business? David, I'll throw this one to you. I'm going to kind of ask each of you, you know, because a lot of times what we're at the SBDC, what we're dealing with is people just getting started in business. And so, and that typically, you know, if you've got a track record of 5 years and you've been making a profit for the last couple, you know, the lender is happier to see you than if you're starting a business. And so what is it, I mean, for those out there in the audience that are starting a business, what do they need to do before coming to any one of you to make it look enticing for you as a lender to loan them money?
They need to go to the Small Business Development Center
Okay.
and get help with their business plan,
Okay.
because that's something that they definitely need to have as a startup. You've got to have a business plan. You need to know where the money's going to go, and you need to have a plan for at least the first 2 years, if not 3 years.
Okay.
You know, with projections, because, you know, you don't, as a new business, you don't have the track record, so it's like, how are we able to judge what you're going to do? In some cases, you might be able to look at, if it's a, like a franchise, you might be able to look at numbers from other franchises to help.
Okay.
You know, as a startup, it is a very difficult loan to get. It's
Okay.
not easy. But that being said, we've done quite a few in the last even probably 4 years that were startups that we were able to get done because A, they have a business plan, B, either hopefully, you know, somebody has some strong financial backing,
Okay.
or, you know, they have some cash themselves that, you know, that they're willing to put into it. We can't finance 100% a brand new business, so they need to come to the table with something themselves.
Well, and that just makes sense, because if they don't have any skin in the game, as they
Exactly.
say, you know, if it's all the lender's money or all somebody else's money, then, you know, if things get a little tough, what's their incentive to work their way over that hump? Right? Now, for a startup business, if there's no real estate involved, does that doesn't factor into what you do at Essential Capital,
No,
right?
not at all. What
Okay.
we would do if we got a phone call, which we often do because we're in the SBA directory and whatnot, is we would try to refer that client over to SBDC for some counseling and business planning, and to a financial institution that may be interested in working with them. So we would hand them off pretty efficiently to another contact person, such as David or Janice.
Okay. So, Janice, if I'm a startup business and I've written a business plan, I've gone to the Small Business Development Center, and I've got a business plan that everybody agrees is pretty well put together, what are some of the things that you're looking for in that business plan?
I kind of want to know if that borrower has any industry experience in the type of business they're wanting to start up. That's crucial. And if
Okay.
they don't, then something that's similar in that industry background, whether if they ran their own business at one time, even though it'll be a different business. We look at their resume. We look at their projections, and the projections really need to have assumptions, like David alluded to earlier, finding other business. Where are you getting these numbers from? The bank doesn't want them being pulled out of the air. We want to know where they came from. So it's very important to have those assumptions go along with projections. And we look at an overall, you know, marketing plan. How do you plan to grow the business? And we look at that and their financials. Their personal financial statement is a very important tool that we look at, as well as their credit report.
Okay, which comes to the challenge, because there are always a few folks who have some, shall we say, blemishes on their credit report. So from the credit union's perspective, somebody comes to you, it looks like it's a good idea. We'll stick with the startup stuff for a moment, okay? It's a startup business. It's an industry that seems to be growing. So there's a lot of pluses within the business plan. But when you look at the personal financials of that person, there's some credit issues. Are there some credit issues that are better to look at, better to have than other credit issues?
Yes.
Okay.
For example, if somebody has medical issues, you know, medical collections, it hurts their score, but it's not going to be, it's something that we can kind of overlook some. You know, it's not as serious as if they, you know, had a foreclosure or even a very recent bankruptcy. Something like that is going to be probably pretty difficult, if not impossible, to overcome.
Okay.
You know, again, if somebody had a couple late payments a couple years ago, I think you guys would agree, that's not going to affect them the way that if, you know, they've been late on, you know, for the last 3 or 4 payments on some credit cards or whatever, that we're not going to be able to help them.
Okay, so if go back to me starting my business, and I don't know what this wonderful industry is that's just growing and expanding, but if I have maybe 2 years of pretty good payment record, even if I had something 3 or 4 years ago, especially if it was medical related, then I look better than if
You look better, yeah.
if 3 years ago I filed bankruptcy or
Correct.
had a foreclosure.
Correct.
Okay.
And again, you know, with some of the blemishes too, if you can explain, you know, in writing what happened. Maybe, you know, maybe you lost your job 3 years ago. Well, you know, that you take that into account, that we can understand then, you know, if there were some late payments. But if you're, you know, if you can't explain it and it was just, well, I'm just kind of lackadaisical about paying my bills, well, then that's not, you know, that's not going to help you. No.
Yeah, okay. So let's talk about credit score. What is, Janice, what is a credit score?
Well, it takes all the trades that you have in your credit cards, your installment loan payments, and how you've paid, when you opened them, and when they've paid off, and it formulates a credit score. And we look at credit score is a very important thing when we're looking at an SBA or a conventional loan.
And so what is it, what constitutes a good credit score versus an we need to work here credit score?
I think each bank has a different, our minimum credit score is 650 or higher, so 650 to us is a average credit score.
Okay.
We prefer to see them in the 700s, that's excellent credit, anything over 700, but our minimum score is 650.
Okay, and Janine, I know you work with a lot of different institutions, so would you say that's fairly average?
I would say that that would be kind of a lower point at the 650. It doesn't mean it's not workable at 650. I've seen credit scores even a bit lower than that, but I would say once you're much lower than, you know, between 620 and 650 can be challenging, depending on what caused that score to drop too.
Okay.
We also want to know how much debt they have and how leveraged they are, whether or not it makes sense for them to start this business, and can they cover the cash flows. You know, that comes into play as well. So.
And what about collateral? If I'm in a business that I don't have a building to where we could go with the 504 loan, what kind of collateral or guarantee or of that nature is typical out in the marketplace today? Not necessarily just your bank or just your credit union, but if I'm coming to you to borrow money and I'm a startup business and I'm going to be leasing space versus purchasing space, it seems to me there's probably going to be the bank or the credit union or whomever is probably going to look at something a little bit more substantial than just my nice handy dandy business plan, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, I might have
That
a
would be
decent
the
credit
case.
score. It might not be the greatest, but it might still be within the window. But so what else am I going to have to do?
Yeah, for some people, I mean, you know, if they have equity in their home,
Okay.
you know, that can be part of the answer. You know, and it depends on what type of business it is. Is there equipment? Because if it's equipment, then, you know, we're going to use the equipment or vehicles, that sort of thing as collateral. So I think, you know, in some cases, you know, you hate to say it, but it comes down to a case by case as to what that loan's going to be used for. You know, what are you purchasing, or is it for the leasehold improvements? You know, but one thing I can say for us, and I'm sure most places, is that everybody's got to sign a personal guarantee. They're
Okay.
going to guarantee the loan on behalf of the company.
Okay. So if I'm a sole proprietor, then I am that.
Yes.
But if it's a corporation and I'm the president of the corporation, then you're going to want my personal guarantee
Exactly.
as well.
Correct.
Okay. Well, that just makes sense. Now, are there any types of, I don't know whether industries is the right word, are there situations where it's you just not, don't bother coming to me because, you know, you're running a brothel or something? I mean, that's
Exactly. Well, that would be one.
That
but,
would be
you know,
one.
That's a good example.
But are there any businesses that typically all of you tend to shy away from? I think it might be easier to identify those than all the ones that you would lend money for.
That's true.
I can speak for the SBA. We need a for-profit organization
Okay.
to start with. So if it's
Okay.
a not-for-profit, we don't lend directly to not-for-profits.
Okay, well, that's a good
and
example.
that's a very good example of what the SBA is looking for. There are categories in the SBA world that require a larger down payment because they might be a special type of business.
Okay.
You know, something that is in like a bowling alley, golf courses, hotels, anything like that are considered special use, and they would require larger down payments than a more generic category of business.
Okay. Okay. So are there any particular industries that in this current environment that you're actually looking for versus not want?
Well, on the bank side, some of the businesses that it's easier to say what's prohibited, or the things that our bank isn't really currently looking at, and that would be like gas stations, laundromats, anything that has environmental issues.
Okay.
Some construction-related industries, marinas, hotel lending is very specialized, but other than that, we'll take a look at most owner-occupied
Okay.
real estate or equipment financing. We'll definitely take a look at.
Okay. Anything specific from the credit union perspective?
Not really. I mean, we'll venture out into some investment property.
Okay.
You know, we'll look at a lot of the things that Janice said they wouldn't, you know, and we're going to take it on a case by case. Again, if it's making money and it can afford the loan payments, then yes, we're probably going to do it.
Okay. Now, one of the situations that we tend to run into at the SBDC, which sort of makes you feel bad, you know, you've got somebody and they've started this business and they've put their own money into it. Okay? Well, now they've gotten through their own money and they're looking for working capital. So now they want to get a loan. You know, it's still kind of what would be considered a startup business because they haven't been in business for 3 or 4 years. Maybe it's within the first year, maybe it's within the first 2 years. So somebody who's gotten it started, you know, has got the momentum going, but now they've spent their own money, and now they're out of their own money, and they still need to get over the hump. Is that a potential loan situation? It is. So you guys do lend for working capital?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Ah, okay. Well, see, this is good information because I didn't realize that. I had always heard, no, you got to have something else attached to this. So, okay. So I'm a startup business, and I've started this, I don't know what kind of business it would be, retail, say, and I need to go buy inventory. So that's another thing that I could come to any of the lending institutions theoretically and be considered?
Yes.
All things considered?
All things considered.
Okay. Am I going to need a business plan?
Possibly.
Okay.
Won't say always. You know, I mean, if you're established for a little bit of time, you might not need a business plan. You know, but again, you know, it could be something that, let's say you're only 6 or 7 months into it. Yeah, we're going to want to see some type of plan as to where the money's going to go and, you know, what the turn is on the inventory, that sort of thing.
Okay. And so I'm just trying to come up with scenarios that we run into where people are looking for loans to see if we can kind of work through for anybody that might be listening on, okay, you know, that sounds kind of like what I'm experiencing, so how do I go about this? So, well, let's look at the person out there who says, you know what, I've always wanted to start my own business, and I've got this idea, but they're sitting in their living room and they're watching you guys on TV, and they don't know what to do. So what's your advice to those people? Janice, we'll start with you.
Well, David mentioned that earlier. The Small Business Development Center at UNF is a great place to start. For the first step is to go there, find out, meet with one of the counselors there, the analysts, to go over what business you want to start and do your due diligence ahead of time. Find out why you want to start that particular type of business. They'll help you with workshops, helping you with the business plan, and if it's a viable sustainable business for the next 3 to 5 years, they'll help compile that business plan for then you to come to David or myself or Janine to discuss getting borrowing money to start it.
Okay. You guys want to weigh in on that?
I would say that that's definitely a good start.
Okay.
You know, and again, you want to take a look at where the other, you know, some of the other factors are that you have to consider when you're doing this. You know, are you going to quit your job now? And if you are, what's going to keep the roof over your head? You know, because typically a new business is going to make money right from the start, so a lot of people can't take a salary. So, you know, you have to think about what is your secondary source of income, you know, or do I have enough money saved that I can carry myself? And that's part of the reason why you need that business plan too, is to see, you know, where exactly is that coming from?
I think that's an interesting point you bring up, because I know in a lot of the people that I've talked to, and they have this great idea, and you say, you know, this is, believe me, before they're even coming to you guys. And they think you know, they want $50,000. And, you know, you ask them, well, you know, tell me what you need the $50,000 for. And the one thing that they tend to forget about is, who's going to pay my mortgage when I'm running this business?
Right.
Exactly.
You
That's
know,
a huge
am I going to
factor.
do this on the side from my regular job that I have now and then transition in, or is it the kind of thing that I need to jump in with both feet and quit my job and do, and then of course, you know, the hyperventilation starts, you know, the panic starts.
Right.
Exactly.
So that's an excellent point, because I think oftentimes, you know, they've got it all figured out. They know okay, my equipment's going to cost me this, or I need to get that, or, you know, for a year or 2 years or however many years out, my lease payments are going to be this. And somehow magically they forget, you know, you got to eat.
Yes. Got to
So-
put a roof over my head.
Got to put a roof over my head. Exactly. Exactly.
Well, you know, I find that people aren't prepared on the documentation side so much. You know, they haven't put together all their home paperwork. And that's a really great exercise for everyone to do, is that's keep your 3 years of personal tax returns and all schedules all together. Is your resume up to date? Do you have a piece of paper that explains your qualifications for starting your new business? You know, we love all the ideas, but we have to see some substance behind it of, you know, their background and their ability to run that business, and that they're either experienced in that field, or how are they going to get the experienced folks in there with them. You know, how many people, we're counting all the time on jobs, and how many people are going to come to work with you, and things like that. And in addition, with them jumping out on their own to explore this adventure and make sure they can go get the financing. So just doing a little personal housekeeping is always a good idea as you're getting started, I think.
You mean not the box of the receipts that you typically take to your accountant on April the 14th, you know?
But if you haven't filed your taxes, you'll definitely want to get those in order, have all of those filed and current, and, you know, or copies of your extension and a timeline of when you're going to do it, because all the lending institutions will ask you pretty much for a 3-year history of everything that you've been doing.
Now, is that 3-year history because I've had a business for 3 years? Or if I'm a startup, you look at my...
We also want to know your personal 3-year history
Okay.
of tax returns on an individual basis, and your personal financial statement. Have you
Okay.
completed one lately? You know, what is in your 401k now? What do you have in cash and savings? How much is going in the business versus in your personal savings? And then we do want to see the plan on how they're going to keep up their personal expenses along with the new business expenses.
So in addition to my business plan, I've got to have my tax returns, my resume, my personal financial statement, which I venture to say most people don't do unless they have to buy a house
Okay.
or get a bank loan, right?
Right.
They really don't know how much they are worth, which in some cases might be a wonderful surprise.
Right.
Could be.
So there's more to it than just the business plan.
Right.
Then you've got to fill out the loan application.
Right.
And depending on whether you go SBA or not, there's a little bit more paperwork involved,
Paperwork,
correct? Now, what's the advantage of an SBA loan over a conventional loan to the borrower?
You know, my feelings are that the borrower can get access to more money. They do that based on eligibility. If you're a minority business and things like that, you do get, you know, minority credit for the SBA, that you may be eligible for other financing, you know, just like someone looking at your, you know, 7A loan request with your working capital. If they've been established, you know, and they have good credit, then they're more likely to get a loan with their good, solid business plan. I say the better the package, the better the opportunity of getting financing and having everything in order.
Well, and I think most people don't realize that once they hand this to you, that package has to be their salesperson.
Yes.
Their spokesperson. It's that package of paper that's going on to whomever is going to make these decisions. So if it's well written, if it's well put together, it makes it just easier for you guys to evaluate it, or any other lending institution. So